So I'm back with Mark Ludwig. Mark, I read about your idea of the book, in case I'm not here, Lessons from a Father to His Son. And what was the background behind that? Can you tell me a little bit about what caused you to do this, and then describe the book for us?
Yeah, the book, originally the book came out of the journals. For those of you who don't know my background, and not getting into all the details, but I went 204 days without seeing my son shortly after he was born. He was 6 weeks old, and then I went 204 weeks of having to track him down, another year of a court battle. And there was a reason, time during that period of time that I didn't know for sure whether I was going to be a part of his life or not. And then shortly after that, I was diagnosed with an inoperable cyst in my brain. And it's an area of the brain called the pineal gland, which is pretty small. The cyst got to be one of the largest of anyone living in St. Louis. And my health started deteriorating pretty seriously. And then it became pretty serious that I didn't know for sure was I going to be there or not. And I had already been writing journals to Levi. Literally every day I had started writing to him. Because early on I thought, just in case, how many times have we heard about fathers who weren't a part of their child's life and the child repeating the dad because they didn't, they wondered, did dad ever want to see me or not?
Right.
And I thought I didn't want that to happen in this case. So I thought, just in case that happens, I want him to know that dad was thinking of him. So I tried to make sure that I never de-edified his mother in any way whatsoever. I've always believed that a child should have a right to love both their mother and their father. And I never want him to ever feel guilty about loving his mother. I want him to feel very, very comfortable anytime he's around me, speaking about his mom, talking about his mom, anything like that. That is his right as a child to have his mom as his hero. But I also wanted to make sure that he knew that I was thinking about him. So I tried to write it in such a way that never puts down the other party, but it at least lets him know that I was thinking about him. So for those 204 days, I would write about how, I went to work that day, but I was thinking about him, and how I would, have hopes and dreams of someday being able to play ball with him in the front yard, or what it would be like to pick him up from school, and different things. And then as the health started having some serious challenges, I thought, just in case I'm not there, what are some fatherly mentoring advice that I'd like to pass along to him? That if I'm not there, somebody can take my journal and, hey, your dad wanted to make sure that you knew this. So I started periodically putting down different tips that I wanted him to know, as far as like dating advice and how to treat people and business advice. And then with my exposure in the media, everybody kept saying, you need to write a book. And I heard so many people say that, Mark, you need to write a book. And I thought, well, I don't want to write a book that's a he said, she said about the situation that took place between his mother and I, because I don't think that there's a purpose for a book like that. But these life lessons, I thought, that is a book. And my goal with the book is actually to be able to help raise awareness. They always talk about the fact that things will never change until people who are not affected by an issue can become just as concerned about the issue as people who are affected. Well, it's very hard, and I know myself, and Jeff, you and I were talking, until the situation happened to me, anytime I heard about a father who only got their child on the weekend, I just assumed they were probably a deadbeat dad. I had never realized what they went through. And I think there's a lot of people out there, they just don't understand the situations. Imagine if we can get exposure to people like that. And there are people who are out on public speaking circuits, speaking to churches and organizations and clubs that are out doing speaking. And so by writing more of a self-development book is what it is. It's more along the lines of a John Maxwell, a Stephen Covey, a Zig Ziglar, that give different life principles. And each chapter is going to be a different life principle of different things that people can do to help improve themselves, whether they're in the shared parenting movement or not. These are general life principles for everyone. So it'll give me an opportunity to speak to organizations to raise an awareness for the shared parenting movement of people that don't have any exposure to it right now. Also, obviously, to get on the media. And then my goal is to be able to raise funds. What we need right now is we need some massive funds for the shared parenting movement. We have an opposition that is very, very well funded. And there's times where when pieces of legislation come up, imagine how many times have you heard with different bills, call your legislator and you hear a radio ad. Well, those radio ads cost a lot of money. Imagine if we could have a war chest of $1 million, $2 million, $5 million sitting there, so that if a bill comes up in Texas like Bill 453 this year, we could be putting a radio blitz ad saying, hey, call your legislator, and telling people the true issue that's going on. We need that war chest. So one of the goals of the book is for me to be able to donate the proceeds of that book to help raise awareness and get legislation passed. And as I said, it's going to take a lot of money. And Jeff, as you know, I've done all this for free up to this point. All of us have. We're all sort of volunteers, which is neat that it's a grassroots movement. Unfortunately, we could be so much more effective and efficient if we could get some funds to be able to do some billboards, some radio ads, some newspaper ads, to be able to have a database, to have a call to action if we need to in certain states. So one of the biggest goals with this book is to try and raise some funds. So early on, I'm asking for people to help me out with some of the funds to get the book off and running. Going to take some printing things. I'm not a writer by trade, and because my brain is still slightly affected, I need to have a ghostwriter to help me write it and then edit it and everything, and unfortunately that costs money. So I need a little bit of funds to help get the book off, but once it's off and running, I think it's going to be able to be a very self-generating tool for us to be able to use for the whole movement. And the goal is to be able to share the funds, that if a organization comes up in Texas, I've got some funds that I can send them. The goal isn't just, oh, Mark's the master of all the money or something and it's all going to go to Missouri. No, this is for the movement. We're going to figure out where's the best place to put our money. Is it in Alabama? Is it in Texas? Is it in Iowa? Is it in North Dakota? There's certain areas that are going to be strategic for us to move, and I want to have the money so that when people come up and have a need, I can say, okay, I've got the war chest. Tell me where we need to send those funds.
Right. You mentioned you were working with children in the past?
I've worked with a couple organizations, which is one of the ironies. Everybody all my life has always said, man, you're going to make such a great dad. Because I did so many different things for different kids. The people who know me realize everybody always called me Uncle Mark, because anytime kids were around, I think it was because I was so short. I actually was on a better level with kids than I was with adults. But I've just always had a passion with helping kids. One of my best friends had a child that was born with special needs, and so I've always had a true passion for being able to help special needs kids. And so I helped an organization get an auction started to help try and raise money for kids in the area with special needs. With foster kids, I served on the board of directors of an organization here in St. Louis, and that organization has raised millions of dollars to help foster kids in the St. Louis area. Yeah. So it's just kind of neat. And once again, it's not to be over spiritualistic, but I believe somehow God designs your life around certain things, and He was able to take my passion for kids and my political background and put those together. In the past, my dream originally was to run someday for governor of the state of Missouri, and I had been very actively involved in politics, and I thought doing everything to sort of align for that. Now I'm totally convinced that wasn't part of the plan. My plan was nothing to do about me being a legislator. My thing was totally, I had to have a compelling story, so when I went before the senators who knew me, watched what I went through with my health challenges and with the alienation situation that I went through, that they would say, oh my gosh, we knew Mark. We saw him go through that. I'd have a compelling testimony to be able to help get some legislation passed. And I didn't like the valley I went through, but that's actually one of the chapters in the book. That sometimes the biggest valley you go through in your life is, I believe, God preparing you for something that you have no idea. My pastor did a sermon a few weeks ago where he talks about God gives you more than you ask. And I believe that. Early on, I was saying, I wanted time with my son. During that 204 days, I just kept thinking, I want time with my son. And I believe what God was preparing me for, and not that He picked me over everyone else. I hope I don't come across that way, that somehow God used me alone. Yeah. But I believe that because of my political background, God was saying, not only are you going to get time with your son, you're going to help a lot of other dads get time with your son. Yeah. And I need you to go through this right now to have that compelling testimony. And I just really believed in that heart. So as much as I hated what I went through, and there were times, I'll have to admit, when I laid in bed crying at night thinking, why me? This is so unfair. Yeah. But I still remember last year sitting on the Senate testimony, and I will never forget that feeling. It was like a peace came over me of, this is why everything had to happen. Yeah. This is why the health challenges. This is why the utilities turned off. You're in my condo now. I shared with Jeff earlier, but 2 years ago in December, I literally had my utilities turned off, and I was sleeping in this condo on a sleeping bag with 2 winter coats. When I had Levi, I would go to my parents' house because I didn't want him to have to go through this. And there were times I would literally eat food out of trash cans. People from my church had found me cleaning jobs because I was doing anything I could to try and make money since I couldn't hold down a job. I was stuttering and slurring, and my memory was shot, and I couldn't hold down a job. I was going on interview after interview and unable to get one. So I was doing odd jobs and eating food out of trash cans. And like I said, I'm convinced now, and like I said, there's a whole chapter about that, is whatever you think is your worst valley, pay attention, because somewhere out there is something you're going to do to make a difference for other people.
When I was in Bible college, just goes way back. I was in my 20s at the time. One of the seniors gave a message on the life of Joseph, and he gave a 2-part message on you intended it for evil, but God meant it for good. And then I was a missionary in the Middle East, so I was working with the Iraqi refugees in Jordan, and I gave the same message because at this time I've kept on thinking about this. That message had an impact on me. Robert Reed, if you're listening, you're the man who did this. But then the same thing. I mean, we had Iraqi refugees. They had what they thought was the life, and all of a sudden, now they're refugees in another country, and their whole life is turned upside down. And I was talking with them about, the life of Joseph. What you or what somebody meant for evil, God is intending for good. Well, then through the things that I went through over the last 4-5 years, I mean, there are times the same thing. You're like, what in the world? I'm not, what is happening to me? I was brought back to the message of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his brothers who decided that was a better option than killing him. He was falsely accused of rape. He was thrown into prison. And he becomes the person who saves Egypt and a lot of other people. And Joseph said, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, so for the salvation of many people that you see right here. And that has been the thing that has kept me going to say, I don't understand the evil. God will walk through the evil with you. But maybe you're the person that he's chosen to say, this person will be the person, or at least have an impact to help other people. Because there's so many people who go through this stuff and they get crushed. And we know people like that. Do whatever you can to help others along the way. Anyway, that's a long way.
That's a good point, and that's why I believe it, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I honestly believe it. I believe God got me through everything like that, and
right.
I believe the glory goes to God. Yes, my name's going to be out there, and I know there's going to be people saying, oh, you're trying to grandstand or something like that, but I honestly believe I had to go through what I went through so that I would have a compelling testimony. I do want the glory to go to God, because I 100% believe this would not have happened without God's hand on everything that's happened in Missouri. There's too many things that have taken place that are beyond coincidence for the bills that have taken place in the state of Missouri. So in my mind, all the glory goes to God for the book and for everything.
I think the other thing is that the book will do is to break the silence. There's a certain part of this whole process in which you maybe feel shame or failure. What happened? And what really happens as well is that when you feel alone and you're like, nobody's gone through this. And then you start to find that, wait a minute, this is widespread. This is happening all over our society. This is one of these issues that we've been silent on that we should have been speaking out on for years. And I think that having the courage to come forth and to say, this is what I'm going through, to expose yourself, gives other people the courage to say the same thing.
I get an average of 8 to 10 phone calls a night, 7 nights a week. And the biggest growing number that I'm seeing now is people in their 20s and 30s that say, you know what, I grew up hating one of my parents because I was told this by the one parent. And as I got older, I contacted the other parent and realized they had wanted to be a part of my life the whole time. They were basically pushed out. And one in particular is a girl that I know very well. I want to make sure that I don't give her identity away, but she had contacted me and told me that her father had left when she was, I believe, 12 years old, if I remember right. And she had been told that her father didn't want to be a part of her life and couldn't stand her, and that he was horrible to her, and basically brainwashed, if you will, into believing all these things that her dad and her never had a good relationship. And she said, so she basically cut her dad out of her life. She said around age 27, 28, 29, she started having memories, pleasant memories, when she was 8, 9, and 10, and saying, you know what, I remember my dad teaching me how to ride a bike. I remember going to the zoo with my dad. And she said all these pleasant memories started popping up. And she said it was just so weird because in my mind I had literally erased all those memories. And in her late 30s she went back and sought her dad out and found out that no, her dad had basically been pushed out. She said her dad was talking to her about all that. She said, I remembered all those memories.
Right.
And I'm just amazed at how many people now, second generation, are telling me, probably it's up to an average of at least 5 to 7 a week every single week now, of people saying they were alienated from one of their parents and they found out it was all a lie.
Wow. So Mark, right now, you're looking for funds for the book. And it's basically, from what I've talked with you, it sounds like you have the idea that once the book once it gets into press and everything, gets to the media, it'll be a platform. But right now, it's the crucial part because there really are not the funds to get it into print. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and as you can see in my condo, I was down and out, as I said, without being able to work for a couple of years because of the cyst in my brain. It took a financial toll on me. And the way I figure, I need about $20,000 to get the book published up and running. That's as far as ghostwriting fees, layout design fees, editing fees, basic printing, and some simple marketing. Once I get that in place, I've got the media connections to get myself on TV and radio in St. Louis to sell enough books to take it to the next level, and then to sell enough books to take it to the next level. So I believe that the hardest part is I need $20,000. Once I get that, I can get that book self-generating, and now we've got some true funds to use for the cause.
Right.
I'm very fortunate. I've got a person in St. Louis that has offered. He said, "I believe in a handout, or a hand up, not a handout." So he said, "If you raise the first 10,000, I'll match it and give you the second 10,000." So once again, it's another one of those God things.
Yeah.
So my mission, I need to come up with $10,000 in a very, very short period of time.
What is the time frame?
And within the next 30 to 45 days is what I'm looking for.
Okay. Okay.
And so obviously, if people can write big checks, that helps. But there's some people that, $10 or $25, it helps. It adds up. If we can get a lot of people that just say, "No, I don't have a lot of money," and I've always tried to be that way, even when I didn't have a lot of money. When I saw people had a cause, sometimes I would only send $5 or $10, and it may not have seemed like a lot, but trust me, that was a lot to me on my budget.
Yeah.
But it was because I believed in that cause. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking people for. This isn't about a book. This is about a cause. I honestly believe in my heart we've got a chance to really raise some awareness in areas that we couldn't get the word out before.
Right.
But by having a book as a hook, if you will, we can now get exposure for our issue in different arenas that we've never been in before.
Let me take this one step further then. We've talked about individuals, but what about corporations? What about places that employ people? Because, you have gone through this and you've known other people that have gone through this, and it affects their work. For employers, it would make sense for them to actually donate for this because they're going to get employees who can focus and be more productive.
Well, you bring up a good point. That's one of the things I said, sort of like Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. I didn't just wake up one day and say, I think I'm going to write a book.
Right.
There's a whole purpose of what can this book accomplish from a legislative standpoint, from a fundraising standpoint, from a public awareness standpoint. And ironically, one of the areas that I thought was a book like this is a very good way to start getting into some of these corporations in their human resources department. Right now, we've got awareness for different gender identity things. We've got awareness for equal rights. We need to get an awareness for a lot of men that are going through this.
And women as well.
A lot of people, exactly, it should be gender neutral.
Right.
But a lot of people don't understand. They think, well, this parent, they intentionally lost their job so that they could lower their child custody payments. No, they didn't. If you take a child away from a parent and you expect them to, the thing they love most in their life, you take out of their life, and you expect them emotionally just to continue on with life like everything's normal, it's going to affect their workplace, like you said.
Right.
So if we can start raising awareness in the workplace of things that are going on, and to create an awareness too. And my goal is to create a resource center in conjunction with other organizations.
Right.
As I said, there's Time to Put Kids First that has a great resource center.
Right.
So if we have fathers that are in this situation, corporations will know, oh, hey, we need to get fathers or mothers that are going through this. We can link them up with this organization. Hey, I tell you what, we're not the place to help you, but we know some resources for you that can help you through this situation. So that is one of the things. But yeah, corporations, I am looking. I've got a couple of smaller corporations here in St. Louis. More family-owned type companies that have already said they're considering sending a donation. They haven't sent it yet, but I believe a couple of them are going to send at least some kind of a donation.
Thank you so much. If there's anything you want to add at the end, I so appreciate that you gave me this time to come by and visit you and to meet Levi too.
Yeah, well, thanks. And like I said, if anybody can contribute to the book, I really would like it. I hate having to ask for money. But I need to. It takes money to get anything that you want done. If you're going to build a business, you're going to build a bridge, you're going to get anything done, it's going to take money. To get legislation passed, it's going to take money. The book is the avenue I'm using, so I do need money. If it's $10 or $25, I am grateful. If people can afford $50 or $100, obviously it's going to help because it takes smaller chunks.
Right.
But I do have you can either contact me on my personal Facebook page at Mark Ludwig. I do have a page called In Case I'm Not Here, which is the Facebook page for the book itself.
Okay.
And on that page, I do have a GoFundMe page set up that you could just click the link on the GoFundMe page.
So Mark, if you don't mind, I will post all of these with the video. If you get like 1 million friend requests, you can blame me. You might have to have a special page for that. But thank you again so much. Thank you for everything that you do. I will tell you once again, to me, you are an inspiration and a hero. I think that Levi has a wonderful dad. And I am grateful for what you're doing, not just for yourself and for him and for the people here, but you're actually doing something that will benefit parents and children and grandparents and grandchildren throughout the whole country. And I just thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.